In my previous video, I talked about how to bring inspiration back into your life. So now we want to talk about how to stay disciplined as a creative person. So how do you do that? From my experience, the steps that I follow can be roughly divided into three major groups: fear of structure, lack of urgency, and indecisiveness. Let's start with the group number one, fear of structure. This is probably the major fear of all creative people. The fear that if you put any limits to what or how you create, it will inevitably lead to a poor end result. I'm not going to be talking about whether it's true or not. You must have a lot of evidence on your hands already that just doesn't help addressing your fears. So instead, we want to focus on the steps you can follow through your fear. And the first one will require you to change how you view discipline. When you are a professional athlete, you might train for years before this one important performance that will define your entire career and your titles. So I suggest you to approach your working sessions as an artist the same way professional athletes approach their training program. Not every piece of content you create has to be or will be a masterpiece. And that's not the point. The point is to hone your skills. So next time when you have a great idea, you have the right skill set to bring it to life. The next on our list is to have dedicated time for discipline and inspiration. I gotta say that this fear of structure is not without a reason, because as we all know, rigid structures do tend to kill the creative spirit. In order to avoid that, you have to have separate time slots in your schedule for ideation and working dutifully on these ideas. Even more so when you are hit with inspiration, which tends to happen quite a lot with creative people. Just write down all the ideas that come to you without editing or censoring them. Just let everything out of your mind and onto the paper, and then in your next working session, you can develop these ideas further. Finally, you want to have some unstructured creative time in your schedule. As I already said, this fear is not without a reason. So in order not to work yourself into a creative block, we'll want to keep some playfulness with how we create and what we create. And the best way to do it is by having some extra hobby that you will use as a creative outlet. And it can be within the same line of work. Let's say you work on a historical novel, you really want to publish it, and that's why you try to stay disciplined with writing it. And then on the side, to remind yourself of how much you love writing and how great it is to bring ideas to life, you create some short mystery novels. Or it can be a totally different activity. If you work on discipline in writing, then your free creative time can be about painting. If you paint, you can film. If you film, you can sculpt something out of clay. The possibilities are endless and honestly go as far as your imagination. Moving on to the group 2, lack of urgency. If it is not the fear of structure that is a huge turnoff for creative people, then it's their inability to bring themselves to start working on their projects. The harshest but most effective way to deal with it is by doing a dance meditation. Simply becoming aware of your own mortality will free you from all procrastination once and for all, and will give you instead huge anxiety and fear of not achieving enough or any of your goals during your lifetime. But hey, that's a totally different story. If that is too harsh, then I suggest you to write down your plans for the next 5, 10, 20 years. I know you might be thinking right now,
come on, I don't even know what's going to happen to me in the next 3 months.
And that's okay. These plans don't have to be complete or be plans at all. They can be just assumptions for your future life. The goal here is to take a more objective look at how you use your time or how you plan to use your time in the future. You might realize that by a certain age you want to start a family, want to progress to a certain stage of your career, want to take a loan for a house, want to pay the loan for the house. By writing down these assumptions, you will be able to realize and embody the most boring truth of all. There will always be something that takes up time and space in your life. It is a cliché thing to say, but it is indeed true that you don't wait to have more time, you don't find more time, you can only make more time. So instead of waiting around for a perfect moment to come, you can just start now. Another way this lack of urgency manifests is when creative people approach their project as this huge mammoth of a task. They try to solve it once and for all, they never find time for it, and they end up postponing it until better days. Better days never come. As you've heard many times, instead of working on your project as a whole, you should split it into smaller tasks and work on them one by one. Unfortunately, many of us lack this gift of splitting one huge project into proportionate tasks. Or sometimes the structure of the project doesn't allow for such an equal split. Instead, I suggest you to dedicate some time for your project on a daily basis, and in no time your huge mammoth will turn into a pile of bones. It is true that you can get the best results by working on your project for 44 minutes to an hour a day. It is also true that it's best to work on a cadence that you can actually commit to. So if you can't commit to an hour, then commit to a time period that actually works for you. 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 30 minutes. It will always be true that focusing for an hour is better than focusing for 15 minutes, but focusing for 15 minutes is better than not focusing at all. Always start with something you can commit to and progressively increase the amount of work you do as you get comfortable with it. Finally, indecisiveness. Once again, we have two ways this indecisiveness can manifest as, and the first one is having too many options. This reminds me of a passage from Under the Bell Jar by Sylvia Plath. There, Sylvia Plath describes her life as standing or sitting in front of a fig tree where each fruit represents a different life path. I saw myself sitting in the crotch of the fig tree, starving to death, just because I couldn't make up my mind which of the figs I would choose. I wanted each and every one of them, but choosing one meant losing all the rest. And as I sat there, unable to decide, the figs began to wrinkle and go black, and one by one they plopped to the ground at my feet. I think all of us can subscribe under these words regardless whether you're a creative person or you're not. Sometimes we just feel paralyzed by all the different options and all the different forms our life can take. And here, I just want to remind you that it's probably one of the best parts about living in the 21st century is that it's more common than ever to have a non-linear life path. You can start as a photographer and then decide to switch your career to become a neurosurgeon. Sure, it's not going to be easy, it will be damn hard, but it is possible. Previously, it wasn't accessible or it was impossible for many people to change their career or their life path so drastically. And with that lovely, encouraging affirmation, what I would recommend you to do in order to compete your indecisiveness is to focus on one thing for a prolonged period of time. Choose one thing, one project, and focus on it for 1 to 5 years. It might be a bit earlier, but that's usually the time it takes for your compound effort to start bringing you the results that you want. I know now it might sound a bit surprising, unwanted. We're so used to people on social media telling us that you can get crazy results in no time. You can get chiseled abs in 2 weeks. You can learn a new language in 30 days. You can start a new business and scale it in half a year. But the truth is, things take time. Think about yourself. It took you 18 years to become a full-grown adult, and treat your projects the same way. Do not expect immediate results, and honestly, don't think of it as dedicating your life to something for the next 5 years. Just focus on the next step. Focus on the next 15 minutes that you're going to dedicate to this project of yours or this creative pursuit of yours. And the final obstacle creative people face on their discipline journey is the total opposite of what we just discussed. Or in other words, how do I know if I'm doing the right thing? Many creative people struggle with starting a new project or continuing with the same project because they're afraid that what they're doing is not what they're meant to do, or that there is something else that they're supposed to do. And first of all, as I already mentioned in my previous video about inspiration, I really believe that when we are drawn to bring something to this world, it usually means that we already have this gift within us. You know, short people rarely want to take a basketball, and people with shaky hands rarely want to become surgeons. If you look at the world, people, and especially successful people, end up developing their strengths. They do double down on their natural talents or things that they might have picked up from their early years. But that's me rambling. What I want you to do for this step is to do a short journaling session again. I want you to write down all the skills you will learn while engaging in this project. Do not think right now about whether it's going to succeed or not, whether you're doing the right thing or not. Just write down all the skills you'll be able to learn when you work on this project for the next year, 2 years, whatever the time frame, but let's say a year. I'm pretty sure that a lot of the skills on this list are transferable. You probably mentioned things like starting a new project, time management or project management skills, building your own brand, and so on and so forth. These you can easily transfer to the next project you want to take on, or even apply it in your day-to-day life. And if for some reason you can't come up with any skills you'll be able to learn, then at least one thing you will definitely get out of it. And it is clarity. Even if you do not succeed with what you're doing right now, even if you realize that you want to focus on something else, at least you will get this sense of closure and a realization of what does not work for you. And this is it. Let me sum all the steps up. We want, first of all, treat discipline as a training program, separate inspiration and discipline, schedule some time for creative sessions, unstructured creative time. Do some journaling prompts that will help us understand how time flows in our life, or more specifically, how we use time in our life. Dedicate some time to our project so that we don't get overwhelmed with the sheer amount of work. Focus on one area, one project at a time, and work on it for a prolonged period of time. Write down all the skills that we'll be able to learn so that we don't get afraid of not doing the right thing, because whatever we do, we can get something out of it. I hope you enjoyed this video. Consider subscribing to this channel for more similar content, and as always, I will see you next time. Take good care. Bye bye.